Portimao is one of the best racetracks in Europe. And with that opening statement, you should imagine that this is a very special video. And indeed, it actually is. And in order to let you understand why I'm saying this, let's start from the start. Earlier in 2019, I actually visited Portimao with work, and it was a beautiful 2 days on track with some fantastic machinery. I got the opportunity to be in a GT2 RS. Into a McLaren Senna, all these cool fast cars that we discussed also in previous videos. Machinery that can carry speed that the average one lap hero cannot even fathom. And at the end of that fantastic 2 days event, that I got the opportunity to drive my dream car. a 991.2 GT3 manual. So one of the best naturally aspirated engines in production, paired with a manual gearbox with fantastic brakes and a beautiful chassis. So as far as I am concerned, one of the best cars Porsche has produced.
Μέσα, ήρεμα, γκάζι κι ανοίξου. Κι άλλαξε μου σε τρίτη. Μέσα, ήρεμα γιατί θα σου πετάξει κόλλο. Μπράβο. Πάμε, κατσαρίδα. Ήρεμα το τερμήν, άστα ήρεμα. Άνοιξε και πάτα.
And you might find this a little bit funny, because as the memories of that trip started being processed, I came back to the same thing. I was thinking I would like to go there and drive this track with my MX-5. And I know what you are thinking, you know, like you are there in this fantastic event and you drive these fucking cool cars, and the only thing you're thinking is about you going there with your stupid old MX-5. And unfortunately, I am this type of person that has this type of problem. So this was exactly what I was thinking. Later in the year, a friend of mine said there are this couple of MX-5 guys, local MX-5 guys, that go to an event that happens towards the end of the year at Portimao, and if you want to do the track, that is sort of the event you want to do. And I actually paid attention to his comment and I patiently waited, but that event didn't really happen at the end of December. So it was actually January when that event would materialize. And that event was a track day by Drivers Legion. Drivers Legion is an organizer that I didn't know before. You know, Victor, his brother, and his wife run this beautiful thing. And they get together a cool group of people, and the atmosphere of the track day was actually exceptional. And it also gave me the opportunity to meet some fantastic people. So I have to clarify something here. You know, like a friend of mine said, like when you go there, you're gonna meet the guy that has the fastest MX-5 in Portugal, the fastest turbo MX-5 to ever lap Portimao. And normally when you hear things like this, you tend to be a little bit hesitant, because these titles normally come with people with the wrong attitude. But one of the most beautiful surprises was actually meeting all the guys, Rui and all the guys from Lisbon, and Essex Garage, their mechanic that actually puts these cars together. And not only they had a couple of fantastic cars, you know, like properly well-sorted turbo cars that are made to be driven lap after lap on track, but they also, all of them had the right mentality, you know, not people stuck in internet heresy, not trying to follow the recipe, people actually buying parts, installing them in cars, driving them hard, understanding what works. So talking back and forth with these people the previous night was already a very cool thing. And then going on track with them the next day only made my experience at Portimao better. And I might expand a little bit more on this, but I have to specifically thank Andre that actually got me out on his MR2 early in the day, just a little bit to refresh my memory and to see a little bit how the locals actually drive the track. I've been to Portimao before, as I said, and I've driven it, but I've never seen it from locals. And it's very important sometimes, you know, to do laps with people that have done hundreds, and they actually know the place. So I went out with Andre and his MR2. Was a very cool thing. He was a very clean driver. I really liked the way that he tackled it. And it was a beautiful start of a day that only kept getting better. I had the opportunity to go out with Rui as well, and I haven't been in a so well-sorted turbo MX-5, you know, for a very long time. And it kind of reminded me what I love from my turbo car. And it had all the cool things that basically my car never had. It was actually polished, and the tune was very good, and the suspension was very good and it could match the car, and the brakes were there and it had the aero. So basically it was a very, very well-rounded car. And I tell you that you might think that this is a very simple thing, but I guarantee you, having been into multiple tuned MX-5s, the majority of cars out there are not like this. So it's actually the exception when you see a car that is actually well-rounded and nicely done and made to be driven. And especially made to be driven multiple laps, because that turbo car actually kept driving the whole day without any issues. And as you probably know from my car, I almost never arrived at this status.
Not risky. Yeah.
That is my experience with the MX-5, guys, and it might be of interest to actually share with you in a future video a complete stint of me and the turbo car going together. But I think already from the lap that you saw in the start, you have an idea how cool that was. It was in fact so cool that my original plan was only to do half day, and I was having so much fun there in the event that I decided to cancel my plans and to stay there the whole day and literally drive as much as I could. I took people out for passenger laps and generally enjoyed the track up until the very end, up until the sun went down. And these couple of days at Portimao happened to be the highlight of my trip. Probably as a complete experience, you know, the best fun I had on track through all these trips. And it might be that some of the tracks I did have more historical importance, and it might be that some of the other places I wanted to visit them more. But all in all, as an experience, you know, like traveling to a place to do a track, Portimao ticked both boxes. It's in a beautiful part in Portugal. The people were amazing. I would almost say that the first time that you do Portimao, you should do it at a Drivers Legion event. And then the track itself is a fantastic thing. I knew that beforehand. I knew it before driving it with my MX-5. But it is only when I drove it with my own car that I got it to experience it in full. So let me talk to you a little bit about the circuit, because there is a possibility that many of you don't know Portimao. Again, it's a young track, 10 years old, 11 years old. So it's basically nothing like the old school tracks of the past. And actually the facilities are impressive. Some of the best I've seen in Europe. So it should not be a surprise why manufacturers use it so much. Porsche uses it a lot, BMW has used it in the past. Going to a launch at Portimao and driving a car at this track tells you almost everything you need to know about a car. And Portimao is a track that really tests cars. So it has big elevation changes, blind corners, fast corners, slow corners, big compressions. It basically has everything. There is not a single interesting driving element that this track doesn't have. And I will try to not make this like as a long guide, first of all, because I think that people really don't enjoy all that talking. And secondly, because if you remember earlier in this series, I mentioned Driver 61, so they have also a very cool tutorial about how you tackle Portimao. So if you want like a full detailed guide, like all the 40 minutes of it, I highly recommend you go check that video. And now I will tell you a little bit of why I consider Portimao one of the best tracks in Europe. It has to do with two things. It has to do with flow, something that we mentioned before in other tracks. And this is one track that flows from the start to the very end. And it has to do with that tricky last final corner, you know, I said to the very end of the lap. Portimao has this last difficult corner that keeps you at your toes even to the last second of your lap. And let's start from the opposite. Let's start from the first corner. Portimao has a very long straight, a straight that is not flat at all. It actually goes up and then goes down. So as you approach the first corner, you are already into a tricky element, a downhill braking zone. There are plenty of reference points around, and there are a lot of these tall, sort of yellow sausages on the inside of corners. So a lot of times it's very easy to find your apex because you basically can see the yellow thing there, and you know that you should sort of aim there. And since you have quite a few braking markers, you know it's actually quite easy to find your braking zone for turn 1. I actually did a very easy turn 1 because I was saving the brakes because I want to do one more track. But you can see this clearly from the video. However, you should understand that sort of as the track starts to drop, this is where you have to find your braking point. And it's one of these corners that actually have quite a bit of a runoff, so you could actually overdo it as much as you want. I never did this. If you notice, in the majority of the tracks, I actually don't use curbs and don't go off track limits because I'm trying to save a little bit the car. But if you want to go for the ultimate lap time, you can actually dive bomb yourself into turn 1 and you could even go off track and it's not the end of the world. And turn 1 is particularly cool because it continues with a very fast turn 2 all the way to the braking zone for turn 3. This track map is a little bit strange because the numbers are not really correct, but basically I'm gonna go through literally pointing the corners. There are a few different ways to count the corners because as you can see, this track map goes from 1 to 3 to 4, and for some people turn 11 Portimao is basically 2 corners, for some people is 1, so it's a little bit tricky. But back to what I was saying, one of my favorite elements is that you start the lap with a difficult, tricky downhill braking zone, 2 fast corners to get you settled, and then a slow corner here that almost turns you around. Quite easy to get the car sliding there. Try to not do this. And then a blind corner uphill as you are about to exit to this straight, which is also a very important straight because it's one of the biggest straights of the track. So normally it's quite easy there in that blind corner to get your car sideways moving in the middle. Try to keep it clean and have a good fast exit. There is plenty of room to go in the exit of that corner. I didn't use it, but if you need to, you can. And the drive out of here, out of turn 4, it's actually very important. And turn 5 is a big hairpin. So of course, after this very fast accelerating zone, you start going downhill. So again, tricky downhill braking zone on the power hard, and you already start to go uphill for another tricky session here. 7 is not really, it's just a kink, you know, but basically here, Samson Corner, all these combos, you prepare 2 corners, 2 right hand corners to prepare for you starting dropping again is actually one of the interesting part of the track starts for me. I would say basically from turn 8 to 11, 10, 11, Portimao, you know, is a beautiful thing. Downhill, compression, blind, fast, very cool. Portimao by itself here is 2 corners or 1, you can count it any way that you want. It's basically 1 that is the braking zone into the corner, and you basically only do the second corner. This is a very tricky thing, very difficult to understand how much you have to brake, how much you have to go out, when you have to go in. It's also very easy to miscalculate and roll off the brakes too early and you still understeer and you have a bad exit for this part, which is sort of a little bit of like a repeating element. After Portimao, you drop again downhill, only to have to do a very fast uphill left-hander that has a big compression. And here, before 13, also the track actually drops on the outside. So it's not like you can actually use all the outside track there. It is this type of slow corner to fast corner with a compression to a slow corner again that actually tests you both about high-speed stuff and your actual braking and your setup of your car. If you don't have a car that is actually aero-balanced, and unfortunately my car sort of falls in that category. If your car is not aero-balanced, you are really gonna struggle in all these things. And if you have like suspension travel issues like I had, you are also gonna struggle through this. So I actually struggled through all the compressions. And of course here, as you get ready for the 2 last corners, I think here 14 is one of the corners that I never really managed to understand. You know, there are a couple of different lines. I have done them both. I actually followed the locals. None of the lines really make you feel confident. You know, it's very important because this is gonna be sort of your run off to the last corner of the track. And as we said, the last corner of the track is the highlight. The last corner of the track is something very special. Unfortunately, you cannot feel it on video, so it's one of these corners that are so long and so tricky to do in real life, and you actually have the forces, and if you don't have a well set up car, it will actually sort of bounce and it will actually push you, and in the video all these things are very difficult to translate. But the problem is that not only this is a challenging corner, But the beauty of this challenging corner is also that it unlocks quite a lot of your time. So it's not uncommon you leave half a second in the first corner or 1 second in the first corner and 1 second in the last corner. And then suddenly, you know, like you are 2 seconds off your pace and all the difference comes from literally 2 small sectors. Specifically about this unlocking lap time, I actually had all the sectors there to do like a 203. That for me would be a perfect way to finish this visit. But as I said, the track is challenging, so I couldn't really put it together. I sort of found a few of the weaknesses of my car, you know, especially comparing it to Rui's car that actually had similar brake setup, similar suspension, but he actually had a splitter in the front. And even running on semi-slicks, when we both ran on semi-slicks, I could see that his car was actually happier to do some things. And when he changed to slicks, and especially like in the laps that we did together, I could actually see his car and his suspension working, you know, like ahead of me. And I kind of felt a few of the issues that I knew that my car had. I will not speak too much about this here and bore you to death, but on the video before the last one, I promise we're going to talk more car setup and I will actually tell you all the issues that I had with the car and what we did trying to address them. But back to Portimao, I cannot stress how cool this racetrack is. And we had this argument here, you know, like between us, all the one lap heroes, and we said, is it cooler than Spa, or is the fact that we actually are at Spa so much that Portimao is a little bit of a fresh thing, and this is why we tend to like it a little bit more. And Gab brought a very good point. At Spa, the stakes are higher. So if you were to go after the ultimate lap time, the possibilities of you totaling your car are much, much higher. And as I said in that video, I have actually seen that happen. I have seen multiple million euro worth of cars being destroyed in one day at Spa. At Portimao, because the track is much newer and because the facility is more modern, there are actually bigger runoff areas. And sometimes doing a mistake doesn't cost you time. So if you are this type of driver that has no problem to go off the track and then rejoin, you know, then you can actually take stupid risks and you can most of the time get away with it. But for clubman drivers, for example, I never really used any of the runoff areas there, and I drive it as the track really has track limits. So for people that they don't want to take the risk and they are not really intrigued by the risk, I would say Portimao might be an equal experience, maybe even better. It has a few elements that Spa doesn't have. I can tell you for sure that Portimao is in my top 5 best racetracks I've ever driven, and it's probably also in the top 3. So in what exact position are the 3 top tracks is very tricky to separate. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a little bit of a feel why Portimao is unique. I will follow this video with a story, which basically concludes the Portuguese leg of my trip. I want to thank again every single person that I met in Portugal, from the photographer there on track, the organizers, all the people that we got to speak about MX-5s and cars in general the days before or the days after. My friend Joao, that I will speak about him more at the Estoril video. I want to thank all of them. They really made my year, you know, starting January with 2 amazing tracks with beautiful people, being pumped about why we do this, sort of gave me the energy to want to put all these videos together, to want to share this type of experience with all of you guys. The reason that we drop all these videos online now is because when things start getting back to normal, we would like all of you guys to grab your cars and go to similar adventures with your friends. Meet new people, meet new places, drive amazing tracks, and I think that is exactly the spirit of One Lap Heroes. Stay tuned up until the next one, only 3 videos to follow, so this series is about to be wrapped up. Be safe, have fun, see you in the next one.